Hello, welcome to Constitutional Chowder. I'm sorry I'm a minute or two late. We had some last minute customers that came in and they were just lovely. So many people coming in lately. It's really been very rewarding and just loving meeting everybody. So it's been great. Anyway, today is a very fun day because we're going to be talking about the articles of our Constitution. So for those of you who have been watching, we've just finished up last week 27 amendments to the Constitution. And to start with, I try to remember to specify, I'm Faith McCann. I'm Miss Faith here at Enchantments, and this is not what I normally do, but I love the Constitution because I have been studying the 17th century witch trials, not only in colonial America but in Europe for the better part of 40 years or more at this point. And when we had the 17th century witch trials here in colonial America, they started here in Connecticut, in Hartford. A woman from Windsor was put to death in 1647. They finished up with the last accusation of a woman in 1727 in Colchester, Connecticut. I believe there were some I'm reading now that there were some, I believe, in Maryland or Delaware. I'd never heard that before, but I'm sure. When hatred and fear spreads, kind of spreads everywhere. So I wouldn't be at all surprised. I am not an attorney, never studied law. I find it fascinating, interesting, and what's so cool about our Constitution is not only does it apply to every single person on American soil, citizen or not, our Constitution provides our protections and freedoms and rights to any living being on our American soil. But you don't have to be a constitutional scholar. You don't have to be an attorney to know your rights. And you should know your rights. Now, we went over the 27 amendments, starting with the Bill of Rights, and then all of the subsequent amendments that had been added, because our forefathers who created our Constitution knew. They had the foresight to know that, their world in 1791, when our Constitution was first ratified, was not the way the world was going to stay. It was going to progress. It was going to change. It was going to modify. It was constantly going to be in a state of flux. So they created it in such a way that it could be amended and changed as the world changes. Well, the amendments are to protect the citizens of our Constitution, of our country. That's that part of the Constitution. Well, the articles of our Constitution, that's the other part. And that consists, it's what I call like the blueprint, the rule book that our government has to follow. It's the rules. They have to follow in working with us in relationship. So we have the three branches of government. We have first the legislative branch, and this is what the articles do. It basically tells you in detail what the powers, responsibilities, and limitations and restrictions, very important, are between the legislative branch. That is Article 1, legislative branch. It's very specific that they put the legislative branch first. It's Congress. Then we have the executive branch. Then we have the judicial branch. Then we have powers of the federal government, state governments, and how they interact, the relationships. We'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. And then finally, how to ratify and change our Constitution when it becomes necessary. So our first article has to do with the legislative branch. Discusses Congress, the two branches, and it reads the Senate and the House, which are our two branches of the legislative branch. It theoretically works out the checks and balances between Congress and the rest of the government, how both sides work together, and how, again, theoretically, no side gets more power than the other. I didn't write it. That's what it says. Then we have the executive branch, and that's the president and his cabinet. And again, I said restrictions. He can't do whatever he wants with unchecked power. It literally says that. In Article 2, this article details the powers of the president, the procedures of removing the president from office, picking someone new for the office. Now, this wasn't added in later. This was baked into the original, paperwork when they first put it together. It was important. Now, of course, we have the 25th Amendment, which gets far more detailed as far as secession and what happens should the president be removed. We talked about that last week. But this was basically, okay, we're going to have a president along with the the legislative and the judicial branches, the three equal branches of government. If we have a problem with the president, this is, what they can do, what they can't do, and if they don't pay, attention to the rules, this is how we remove them, and this is how we put somebody else into place. It's all right there. So, and along with the powers and the electing process of the president, the responsibilities of the president and the restrictions are laid out as they represent all 300 plus million people in the United States. That's what's so cool about, what should be about that particular elected office, is the president of the United States represents every single person on American soil, whether they voted for that person or not. A president knows that they are very influential to people in our country and around the world, and a president is thought to have the inner self-awareness of using that influence judiciously. Speaking of which, we get to the third article, which is the judicial branch. In addition to naming treason and defining treason, it all so more importantly explains how SCOTUS, our Supreme Court, works and its power. Now, SCOTUS is the place where complaints from Congress typically go. I know lately nationally it seems as if SCOTUS is just the personal law firm of the president. I mean, and that's not saying anything outrageous. I mean, it seems to be in the papers every day, but no, SCOTUS is actually there to field complaints from Congress, and that's their basic purpose. And Congress, in that regard, uses SCOTUS because they might make laws, federal laws, that are questionable that the states don't follow. We had the Dred Scott case in 1857, where Dred Scott wanted to sue to claim freedom for himself and his family, and felt he had the absolute right to sue for his freedom. And unfortunately, SCOTUS made a horrific decision against him, saying that enslaved people had no right to sue for their freedom. And Dred Scott is a terrible time in our history. Well, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was a presidential order in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln, which freed people who were in slavery, basically at that time were able to allow black men to join the military and fight for their freedom against the South. That presidential order was disregarded until the 13th Amendment that reversed that horrible Dred Scott decision in 1865, December 6th, 1865. Now we have the fourth article, which is all about the responsibilities of the states and the relationships between the states and each other. It also details the relationships between the states and the federal government, and that's specifically Congress. This is what's important. Lately, it seems that there's been a mishmash. When we talk about the federal government, we're talking about Congress. Everyone focuses so much on the executive branch because it's so loud right now. The executive branch does not and never has had as much power as Congress, and it shouldn't. It also talks about the responsibilities of the federal government, Congress, to administer new states to the Union under federal land and the territories owned by the federal government. Then we have the amendments, and it talks specifically, this is part 5, Article 5, ratification of the amendments to our Constitution. Now, this is how we make changes to our Constitution. And changes are not made to our Constitution by presidential order. We have a president that just wants to change things. That's not how it works. Sorry. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your opinion is. And you know, right now, it's kind of a crazy time in the United States. It seems as if our laws, which at one time were pretty well set in stone, are now like a philosophy class, with everybody having an opinion. No, our laws, I mean, it is either legal or illegal. And if it comes up to question, you know, it goes to court, decisions are made, precedents are set, and it is followed through. You cannot have a judgment, especially by SCOTUS, whether we like it or not, without it being, it's law. We don't just get to pick and choose. So the 5th article is ratification of the amendments and changing the Constitution. How do we do that? We've talked about this in the previous episodes. 2/3 of each House and Senate must vote in favor of an amendment, and 3/4 of the states vote to amend the Constitution. Once 3/4 of the states vote to amend the Constitution, that is 38 out of the 50 states. Right now, we only have 50 states. Then it becomes a new amendment to our Constitution. That's why, regardless of SCOTUS's ridiculous decision with Dred Scott, the 13th Amendment abolished that. There was no, as a matter of fact, there was no need for a enslaved person to sue for their freedom, because there were no longer enslaved people after the 13th Amendment, because it just was the right thing to do. Then we have the 6th article, the Supremacy Clause. This is one I'm really interested in discussing. When a constitutional amendment such as, let's just pick one for fun, the 19th Amendment which granted all adult women the right to vote. It is the supreme law of the land. Now, this happened in 1923, I believe it was. Now, this particular amendment also attaches to the 26th Amendment that was passed, that the age of 18 is the federally recognized adult age for everyone to be eligible to vote. So, if you are 18 years of age, eligible to vote, you register. That's the law of the states. You got to register to vote, show a valid ID, then you get to vote. That's it. A presidential executive order now remember, the presidential executive order after Dred Scott with President Lincoln, that set a tone, but there wasn't, there were states that didn't care about the Emancipation Proclamation. They basically didn't care what President Lincoln said because there were so many racists in some places. So they were like, we don't care. We do not care about your presidential order until the 13th Amendment was passed, and then they didn't have a choice. They had to abide by it because federal constitutional law supersedes all else. If it's an amendment, it is an amendment. It's carved in stone until it is changed. Well, it doesn't work the opposite way. A presidential executive order, which has recently been signed stating a married woman must now show papers to vote. Yeah, that is an illegal presidential order, and that's not my opinion. That is every respected law institution, law review, law journal, real, serious attorneys, constitutional attorneys have all said, no, this is not even close to being debatable. This isn't even skirting the line. It's illegal. In Kansas, a proof of citizenship requirement was introduced by Republicans, and it was passed in 2011, which ended up blocking the voter registrations of over 31,000 U.S. citizens in that state that were otherwise eligible to vote. The law was later declared unconstitutional by a federal court in 2018, and it was said the bill was about disenfranchising Americans, not non-Americans, Americans, from exercising their right to vote. So this presidential order just the other day specifically and explicitly targets women who, if married or married and divorced or remarried, who have changed their names or have a hyphenated name, or if they do not provide birth certificates, marriage license, divorce decrees, new marriage licenses, and on and on. This is the ridiculous amount of paperwork. They are literally now expected to walk into an elections polling place simply to cast their ballot. Men? No. Men are cool. You do you, but women now, if you fall into any of those you're married and divorced, you're married, divorced, remarried, yeah, you're expected to bring a binder with you. And of course, all of that has to be notarized and validated, and it's up to somebody sitting there to decide, somebody that's just a volunteer that has no additional qualifications to determine if your personal, private identification certificates, which nobody has the right to look at, are valid. Well, it's no surprise that there's zero Democrat backing for this. Why? It's constitutionally illegal. And there's no presidential order that can overrule a constitutional amendment. And you know what? You might like this, you might not like this. I'm not making this up. This is just what's happening today. Number 7, the Article 7 of our Constitution. And remember, these are the rules that our government is by oath supposed to follow in relationship to us. Number 7 is the ratification and the rules for ratifying an amendment to the Constitution. It's right there, all the information on how to change our Constitution. These are the rules our government is supposed to follow. They're not suggestions any more than our amendments, which are our protections and freedom as people on United States soil, are suggestions for us. They are our inherent rights as human beings on American soil. And for people that think that our Constitution only protects American citizens, you are wrong. It protects human beings that are on our soil. You cannot be tortured under the 8th Amendment. You cannot be, you can't be denied your constitutional rights under our Constitution on American soil. There is a reason why certain people are being taken out of our country and put into horrific prisons in other countries. It is against the Constitution, and it is against every other, right of humanity. And once our Constitution is broken, it's not changed, it's broken, and it will forever be irrevocably lost to future generations. I'm going to finish up this series because we went through the 27 amendments. Now we've gone through the articles. It's totally up to you whether you want to believe that our administration right now, one side, the other side, all sides, it doesn't matter, because you know what? If you are in government right now, you're all responsible. We elect our representatives to represent us, the people. All we can do is walk into that voting booth and elect them. That's all we can do. Getting mad at one another, it doesn't do any good. All we can do is go in and vote and do our best to try to pick people who are going to represent us. That's something we got to remember. They're there to represent us, what's best for us. And it's up to you to decide if that's what they're doing. And it's okay to say, you know what, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe these people, but to be mad at somebody that used to be in office 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 2 years ago, it's irrelevant. It's who's there now. Are they representing our rights? Are our rights being upheld? Is our Constitution being upheld? Because keep in mind, if they break our Constitution today, when the next party gets in, they can do the exact same thing. So Benjamin Franklin, when asked by Elizabeth William Powell, she was a socialite, an intellectual. After he signed the Constitution, she asked him, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? And he replied, a republic if you can keep it. I find it interesting that he phrased it that way. Not if we can keep it. He had just signed the Constitution. He was just like, you know what? I know my time is limited. I'm out. He actually went to spend a lot of the rest of his life in France. I think he actually maybe passed away in France. So he was just like, yeah, I did my bit. I fought for this. I helped create this. It's yours now, if you can keep it. Right now, we're probably more in danger since 1860, 65 of losing it than we ever have been. So this is our Constitution, and this is all we have between us and countries that have taken away all rights from humans. In Iran, women are no longer allowed to speak in public. They're no longer allowed to be shown from head to toe any skin, even their face. Only their eyes are allowed to be shown. Not being able to actually speak aloud in public. So many countries, if you actually try to cast a vote, you will be executed and your family will be executed. So making the choice to not bother voting because I can't be bothered, my vote doesn't count, It's not important. I have better things to do. People have died in our country. People have died fighting for our country, for your right to cast a vote. You don't have to cast it. And that's what's so cool. You have the right not to. But I have voted since I was first able to at the age of 18. I always will. Next week, I am going to be starting a new video series that I hope you'll enjoy. I'm going to be starting a video series. It's psychological self-defense, and it will be right here on Tuesdays at 5:05. Psychological self-defense. I have studied martial arts for a very long time, actually in the dojang for 15 years, and then continuing studying it, but on a psychological basis. Also the physical, but on my own. I study behavioral science, behavioral economics, abnormal psychology, and self-defense for everyone, not just females, not just, people that consider themselves, scared to go out into the world, but everyone. Anyone and everyone can be put into a dangerous situation. And I call it psychological self-defense because right now there is an awful lot of classes out there that will teach you a one-day seminar on how to, fight off an attacker and things like that. And I think those classes are awesome. Everyone should try a class like that, and hopefully that will get you into a martial arts class or a regular self-defense class, because unfortunately, if you only take one of those classes, it's not going to stay with you very long. Not to diss those classes, but we have something psychologically called the forgetting curve. And after taking a class, within a week, you have forgotten 50% of that information. Within 30 days, you have forgotten just about all of it, if it is not constantly, repetitively gone over and over and over. That's why we don't learn our ABCs in 1 year of school. We're constantly going over them and writing, and our English classes, our literature classes, our grammar classes get better and more advanced. And so you start writing sentences, and then pretty soon, hopefully, you're writing poetry and more advanced stuff in college. So when you learn self-defense, what I'm planning on teaching is something you can learn just by sitting and listening. It's how to be prepared before you ever have to physically defend yourself, and hopefully you never have to physically defend yourself. It's what to look out for before you stop your car in the parking lot, what to look for before you leave work, what not to do if somebody knocks on your door, what to be aware of that you might not have been aware of before. So I've been studying this for most of my life. It's been something I've always been fascinated by. And staying safe is really important, whether you ever have to use it. Having that sense of self-assuredness and confidence, and not being scared and looking over your shoulder all the time is a really empowering way to go through life. And I'm going to teach you how to start putting those pieces into your world if you want them. And I hope you'll tune in. So that'll be next Tuesday at 5:05. So, and you'll also see this on my YouTube channel, Shadow W Witch, because all of these shows are put onto my YouTube channel, and you can find all the constitutional chowder there, from Amendments 1 to this particular class. And then our psychological self-defense will be found on there too. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope this was informative, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one, and thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate it.